Venice is one of the most beautiful and impressive cities in the world. As much as you have been told about it, nothing will ever be fair to your personal experience. That is why we have decided to create this film to show you the reasons why you should visit this incredible city in the north of Italy. The canals of Venice, so famous throughout the world, are its main attraction. There are other cities on the planet where you can see similar canals, but none of them can match the beauty of Venice canals. It is impossible to visit Venice and not to fall in love with its gondolas, bridges, boats. Certainly the best way to go around and experience Venice is by private boat that will take you through the Grand Canal, reasonably defined as the most beautiful avenue in the world. On board, you can experience the city and recall the legends, history, enjoy the monuments, architectural masterpieces, art, get acquainted with the life of those who created the appearance of this magical city, artists, nobles, courtesans, and other inhabitants of the lagoon. In Venice, there are about 15,000 buildings, among them 900 palaces and 105 churches. They are all built upon millions of tree trunks, 10 to 30 feet long, which are driven through the soft material into the solid ground of the lagoon. These buildings spread over more than 120 islands. Some 400 bridges span the 177 canals that separate these islands. The 2-mile-long or 3-kilometer Grand Canal, shaped like a huge question mark, divides the city into two parts of almost equal size. Venice is one of the most important tourist destinations in the world for its art and architecture. The city has an average of 50,000 tourists a day, and it is considered as one of the most popular and beautiful cities. You can move between the sites of Venice not only on foot or by gondola. There is also public transport in the city, unusual but convenient. We are talking about vaporettos, passenger ships plying the canals of Venice and between the islands of the Venetian archipelago. Venice has a long and glorious history, still alive in many traditions and in the heart of the Venetians. The Republic of Venice was founded in 697 after the decline of the Roman Empire by people escaping from Germanic invasions. People fled from the mainland to small islands in the lagoon, which were difficult to reach and easy to defend. Since then, the Republic lasted more than a millennium until 1797. At the beginning, the Republic was under the influence of the Byzantine Empire, but it gradually became independent. During the centuries, the Republic of Venice has dominated the trade routes on the Mediterranean Sea, from Asia to Africa. It became a rich merchant republic, home to a wealthy merchant class. Along with commercial success, Venice was also a leading military power whose territories were spreading from North Italy to Greece. The lands once owned by Venice belong now to 7 different countries: Italy, Slovenia, Croatia, Montenegro, Albania, Greece, and Cyprus. It is easy to recognize a land owned by Venice from its unusual symbol, the Lion of St. Mark. The Republic of Venice was ruled by an oligarchy of merchants and aristocrats. Venice's decline as a powerful maritime republic began with the opening of new commercial routes in the Atlantic. It is possible to recognize this glorious past everywhere in Venice. the rich buildings along the Grand Canal and in other areas belong to rich merchant families, and the buildings keep the name of the family, e.g. Continari, Cadario, Carrazzonico, etc. Grand Canal is the largest and most popular canal in Venice. In the past, it was a small channel that ran between the islands of the lagoon, which included the picturesque Rialto. Now the size of the channel is impressive. Its length is almost 4 kilometers. Its width varies from 30 to 70 meters, and its depth reaches 5 meters. The main waterway of Venice starts from the station, then makes 2 loops through Venice and merges near the customs building with the canals of La Giudecca and San Marco. The canal has almost no embankments. Their role is played by building facades overlooking the water. Houses are held on stilts and usually have a second door leading out onto land. Several bridges are thrown across the canal, the most famous of which are the Rialto Bridge and the Accademia Bridge. You can also cross to the opposite bank by traghetto. The most beautiful structures have been built along the transport route. Walking along the channel, tourists can see more than 100 palaces and old mansions made in different architectural styles, from Venetian Gothic to Baroque. In Venice's heyday, anyone of note, or who wanted to be of note, had to have a palace facing the Grand Canal, and their palazzi represent every style of architecture. From the 12th to the early 18th century, the best way to see and appreciate all these grand palaces is from the canal itself, as their facades face the water. Viewing these palaces after the lights go on in their glittering interiors is one of the favorite things to do in Venice at night. One of the most popular associations with this charming city is the Venetian Carnival and Venetian Masks. When did Carnival first start? There are many versions. The earliest version dates back to the 11th century. In 1094, the Republic of Venice received houses in Constantinople, which gave it enormous advantages for Mediterranean trade. The celebration of this event could have been the first Venetian Carnival. According to another version, the first Venetian Carnival was carried out in 998, when the young inhabitants of Venice returned their brides kidnapped by pirates. The third version says that the first Venetian Carnival took place in 1162, in honor of the celebration of the victory of the Venetian Republic in the war against Patriarch Ulrico. The local people poured into St. Mark's Square, which had witnessed some of the greatest feasts. In the 13th century, the last day before the beginning of Great Lent was officially declared a day of celebrations and festivities. 2 centuries later, the annual Venice Carnival becomes an integral part of Venice's life. Every year, the whole citizens flock to the Piazza San Marco to take part in the general celebration and watch the performance of acrobats, jesters, and dancers, and magnificent fireworks. It was an enchanting sight. The main attributes of any carnival were costumes and masks, designed to hide social differences and equalize everyone during the festival. The gap between the rich and the poor people disappeared during the holiday. Everyone hid their faces under masks. The mask and carnival costume hid the owner's true appearance, allowing him to do whatever he wanted and not to think about the consequences at all. At home, Venetian masks gained such popularity that they began to be worn constantly. It is worth noting that almost all townspeople would prefer to hide their faces without any carnival. Venice is a small city, and neighbors do not need to know where you left in the evening or from which house you left in the morning. More and more criminals started to use Venetian masks to commit criminal acts. but the Venetians also used masks for good purposes. For example, during the plague epidemic, the doctor used a mask with a long beak. He dripped essential oils on the tip of the beak, hoping in this way to protect himself from the plague. His image was complemented by a long dark cloak and a stick with which he touched the sick. The doctor looked extremely terrifying. Some researchers considered that the plague epidemic caused the widespread use of masks. At first, doctors wore masks, and then the aristocracy took over this idea. Venetian masks have a long and interesting history of origin. In the 18th century, Venetian masks gained such great popularity among the people that people began to abuse them, and the wearing of this accessory had to be strictly regulated. Masks could again be seen on the faces of townspeople only on certain holidays. This tradition has been carefully preserved to our days. One of the most visited sites in Venice and a must-see on any traveler's itinerary is the Basilica of St. Mark. It is located on the St. Mark Square, Piazza San Marco, next to the Doge's Palace, and has always been the center of the public life in the city. St. Mark's Square, or Piazza San Marco, is Venice on parade, where everyone comes to see and be seen. It is Venice's only square with the title of Piazza. The rest are called Campo. Considered one of the finest squares in the world and certainly Venice's prime attraction, it is surrounded on three sides by the stately arcades of public buildings, and on the fourth, by Basilica di San Marco. This basilica has a very special historical interest, since it was here where the Dukes of Venice were consecrated. The city was built on a group of islands and islets in a lagoon separated from the Adriatic Sea by a thin stretch of land. Two rivers empty out in this lagoon. 3 canals run through that stretch of land, allowing in ships and Adriatic seawater. When the tide rises, the seawater enters the lagoon. When the tide falls, it exits. That happens twice a day, every day, resulting in a mix of seawater and freshwater. Sometimes strong winds or bad weather contribute to unusually high tides, which typically last between 2 and 4 hours. It's a recurring phenomenon, especially in November and the winter months. Every Venetian local has a pair of galoshes. All the stores have glass barricades on their doorsteps. Venetian authorities consider any tide above 1.40 meters or 4.5 feet to be exceptionally high, and sirens sound around the city to let locals know it's coming. Those who wish to avoid the risk of Aqua Alta should avoid Venice in November and December. If you do decide to visit during these months, it's advisable to pack galoshes or hip waders, and perhaps reconsider bringing a roller bag. If you arrive unprepared and the water comes up, newsstands offer plastic bags that cover your leg up to the thigh. If you happen to get stuck in St. Mark's in the midst of an Aqua Alta, sit down in a cafe and remember it will go away in a few hours. But water always gives this town a special charm. That is why Venice, like the weather, does not have bad weather.
allí han visto al fondo de la Plaza San Marcos. El horario es a las 5. A las 5.
Venice is a city where you will get lost. It happens, rarely of course, to residents too. Even technology gives up. Your GPS signal may lose you or be imprecise. Internet maps are not always working well. You digit the address and the exact civic number, and they easily point you in the wrong direction. It will happen that you want to get back to a place you've been, and you will wander in circles, but will not find it again. And then you ask, "Excuse me, which way to?" Venetians will look at you, wondering if they should tell you the plain truth. They all end up saying, "Go straight, sir." Well, it's never straight. Why did Venetians build a city where you get lost? Partially, it's because of the marshland where a lot of the islands composing Venice were built on. A network of meandering canals running around deposits of silt could only partially be adjusted. Due to the peculiar nature of the lagoon marshes, it could not result into a perfect grid of streets and canals. In Venice, therefore, you will see the idea of a multi-centered city, and you cannot see where you go. But of course, the most unforgettable cityscapes can be seen from the water during a romantic gondola ride. It's hard to imagine Venice without its Venetian boat, the gondola. It is the most typical of Venetian boats. Dark and with a long, slender shape, it is 10.85 meters long and 1.44 meters wide. It has a flat bottom to allow navigation even in very shallow waters. One of its unusual features is that its bottom is asymmetric. The gondolier needs to balance his weight on the opposite side. Have you ever wondered why Venice's gondola was always built in black? Well, as a matter of aesthetics, black has always been considered synonymous with elegance, and nobles loved being fashionable. But before elegance entered the lagoon, a private gondola would be decorated in over-the-top bright colors and patterns. In 1609, issued decree obliged the typical Venice boat to be painted only in black. This kept things elegant and practical. The profession of a gondolier is considered quite monetary and prestigious. Gondolier's license is not easily obtained for ordinary citizens in the city. The news about the competition for a place spreads among the gondoliers, so their relatives, friends, and acquaintances are assisted with employment on these vacancies. Gondoliers teach them the secrets of gondolier craft from childhood for successful exam testing. The competition is held by the city administration. Therefore, ordinary Venetians have little chance to get this prestigious job. Everyone needs to pass 3 exams: driving, Venice history, and English. After that, they enter a special school at the Institute for the Preservation of the Gondola and the Protection of the Rights of Gondoliers, and get relevant training per year. After the successful completion of the training, the students are awarded a gondolier's license. The new gondola can only be purchased on order. Its cost ranges from 30,000 euros. Gondoliers have their own code of conduct. There are even rules for seducing wealthy tourists. Since the profession is caste, unique, and ancient, the boatman got too big for his coat and began to exceed the speed, swim out into the oncoming lane, overtake the side of the road, jump on the red, make traffic jams, and create accidents, which are called water boat accidents. The police went down to the water, put signs and traffic lights on the canals, bought boats, and began to follow the violators, measuring the speed and checking for alcohol. Every policeman in Venice also dreamed of being a gondolier. He was just unlucky to be born into the family of a gondolier. This is how the world of Venetian gondoliers works. Venice, often called the City of Canals and the Floating City, is also known as the City of Bridges because of the numerous bridges and many canals that lead to the heart of the city, St. Mark's Square, and St. Mark's Basilica. Venice today is very different from what it used to be. In fact, strangely enough, but at first there were no bridges at all. Why? Civilians only used their own or public boats to go from one of the 121 islands to another. Because of the technological progress and fast population growing, it became necessary to build bridges that would connect different areas of the island city. This is how the 435 bridges of Venice were born. 300 are made of stone, 60 of iron, and the rest of wood. The evidence of the first stone bridges dates back to 1170. At first, they also had no handrails. However, due to population growth and probably a few tumbles in the water, railings were added during the 19th century. Venice is probably best seen at night. The day tourists have long gone. You can walk narrow streets, discover the most authentic side of the city, and savor the intimate atmosphere of the city center. From theater to fine dining, sophisticated bars, and outdoor concerts, the choice of after-dark activities in this remarkable city is endless. One of the best ways to truly experience Venice, like a local at night, is to try some of the best wines and food it has to offer. Many tourists make the mistake of flocking to touristy eateries serving pasta and pizza, and not what the Venetians really eat. With its unique lagoon location and proximity to the island gardens of Sant'Erasmo, genuine Venetian cuisine consists of some truly flavorful and refined dishes, relying heavily on fish and vegetables. Venice is literally built on water, so not only is seafood widely available, but it's also of the highest quality. Mussels, clams, crabs, anchovies, and sprats are in abundance and often on the menu. Unlike many parts of Italy, pasta is not the staple. That role is played by the double act of polenta and rice. Everyone who visits the City of Canals must take one gondola tour at some point. And there's no more romantic way to explore this city than under moonlight. Definitely consider going on a nighttime gondola ride if you're in Venice on honeymoon. Ride a vaporetto along the Grand Canal and gasp at the magnificent architecture. Venice is magical any time of the day, but there's something extra special about this city at night. These are just a few of the many things to do in Venice at night that will take your breath away. There is no doubt that Venice is one of the most romantic cities in the world. Such has been illustrated in lots of literary works, and the fact that it is a top destination for most romantic films in the world also asserts its authority as a city of romance. Even if you have no interest in romantic settings, there are a plethora of reasons that makes Venice beckoning, and for which you need to make this your next destination. Forget about streets lined with beautiful pavements. Forget about moving from one location to another with a taxi, bike, or on foot. You will be surprised to learn that there are no roads that can be accessed by car. The authentic beauty of the city lies in its amazing canals and elegant architecture. Imagine yourself walking among low buildings, exploring new routes and places, wandering to find something unexpected again. The stress-free, slow Venetian lifestyle would entrance you completely, and you would fall in love with Floating City.